right, welcome back to Baltimore Sports Collectible, a sports ball podcast. I am thrilled to have somebody who, if you're in the hobby, you certainly know, a man who can just whisper Kyle Tucker and change eBay prices. I'm thrilled to have from Sports Card Nation, and I'm proud to call a friend of mine, John Newman. How you doing, John?
Hey, Danny, thanks for having me. Appreciate coming on with you.
Well, I had to repay the favor because you were nice enough to have me on, and I think you and I are two like-minded people in the hobby, and just getting around to talk cards with friends is one of the blessings of what we get to do. So we're going to leave the real world out of this podcast, and we're going to stick into our little corner of the world and talk cards and sports. How does that sound?
Uh, right up my alley.
I texted you earlier today, and I said I want to talk some vintage. I was at the Strongville Vintage Card Show in outside of Cleveland this weekend, and you'll appreciate this as a Steelers fan. I packed my suitcase very quickly, forgot I was going to Cleveland. Everything I packed was Ravens and Orioles. so, so I'm going around Cleveland, and I've got a Ravens polo on, and I can't figure out why I'm getting dirty looks from everybody. And finally, a buddy of mine says, we're in Cleveland." Um, so
That's funny.
I've heard you talk a lot with Mike Moynihan, one of the
Yeah.
great vintage collectors in this industry. Uh, you've talked about your family. You've talked about getting into this years ago as a dealer, and we're going to get into all that. But as a New York guy, where did you grow up? What years did you collect? Let's cut right to the chase of your card love as a kid. Where were you?
Yeah, Brooklyn, New York. So I'm a Brooklyn born and raised. And I was a sports kid. I played, I watched from an early age. I was raised by my grandparents and my grandfather, being a sports fan himself. I was just indoctrinated automatically. And the first time I knew baseball cards existed was in 1979, and we went to a corner store, not for cards, but my grandfather had to pick up a few other things. And when we went to the front counter, on that counter was a box of 1979 Topps baseball, and I just kind of put two and two together what it was. I saw the baseball player obviously on the outside wrapper, and it said cards, and I said, "Are these, Grandpa, are these baseball cards?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Would you like a couple packs?" And when you're 7 years old, and any adult, grandparent, dad, mom, grandma, ask you if you want something, I mean, it's an automatic yes. And so I got a couple packs. He bought them. If my memory serves me right, uh I think they were 25 cents, so I got two or three. But the first pack I opened, I kind of opened it like I wasn't even out of the store yet. And I was a Thurman Munson guy, but at
I was
that
just going
point,
to ask.
yeah, he had passed away. And so I was a Yankee fan. I'm not a Yankee fan now, but I was a Yankee fan at the time. Craig Nettles, Thurman Munson, Reggie Jackson, Willie Randolph. And, I wasn't my favorite player, but listen, Reggie Jackson's Reggie Jackson. If you lived in New York, he's Mr. October. He could have run for mayor. They say chicks dig the long ball. Well, 7-year-olds do too. And so the third card, about the third or fourth card in that pack, was the Reggie, and I got excited. Whether he's my favorite player or not, I knew he's a great player, and I just got him in my pack, and the rest is history. And then my friends, I showed my friends, "Hey, look, I got a Reggie," and then they start buying packs, and they were more enamored with the gum. And so I started. I could care less, honestly, about the gum. I was that rare
Yep.
kid that wanted the cards. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't get cavities, Danny. I just got them on soda instead. I was a big soda kid, which was terrible. But um, so I would trade my gum and just acquire more, baseball cards at the time. And the rest is really history. That's where it started, and it just
So I love the fact that you're a Yankees fan, even though I'm an Orioles fan. So you're a Thurman Munson guy. You got a Reggie Jackson, and were you only chasing Yankee players, or were you going for all the stars?
I mean, that was kind of like at first, but then I mean, I knew for a 7-year-old kid, 8-year-old kid, I was actually pretty good baseball with the intelligence. Like I knew the other play, started to know the other players as well. So it was Yankees kind of first, but it wasn't just all about the Yankees. And so I just wanted my whole mindset was just to get as many of these things as I humanly could. Yankees and everything else. And then what happened was certain other kid my friends would want certain other teams, and so we would just trade player for player, and again, like the old traditional stories, right? We didn't know what these things may be worth later on down the line, so we're throwing them on the ground or on the floor, and but that's where it started, and I really, I never really stopped. It just picked up from there, and I was going to a card store, and I was going there pretty much almost every day. And the owner of the card store is like, "Hey, now I'm 13." The owner of the card store is like, "John, you're here so much. I need some help. I might as well just put you to work." And we worked on like half pay and half like store credit, which really was all store credit because I pretty much spent the whole thing on more cards. And I did my first show at 15. I was working the shows. His name was Rudy. I was working the shows for Rudy as he was set up. And basically, my job at the shows was I had a skill where I could make monster boxes and shoe boxes like super fast. And he hated it, Danny. Like I was a savior to him because he would cut his fingers on the the
Oh,
serrated edge of the cardboard, and I just was like, you see those guys making those pizza boxes real
that is
quick.
exactly
I
it.
was
Yep.
yeah, I was doing that with Monster and shoe boxes, and so he would bring all the unmade boxes to the show, and that's all I did. Not very exciting, but I was a shy kid too, so that was fine by me. And then I had, by this time, 14 years old, my friends who didn't have as many cards as I did, like they realized like you have quite the collection, man. You should do shows yourself. And I'm like, nah, I don't know. And finally, I decided, when I was 15, I do have a lot of cards. I like getting more. How do you get more? I mean, I wasn't making a ton of money working for Rudy. Well, I'm not complaining, but I'm like, let's see what I could do, doing my own show and try it. If it sucks or it doesn't work out, I'll won't have to do it again. So I got wound up getting my tax number. Obviously, I don't have a license, so at this point, my grandfather had passed away. My dad was always been in my life, so he would take me to the show, help me set up, and with the first one especially, and then he'd look around a little bit. He's a Brooklyn Dodger guy. Might have bought a few Brooklyn Dodger cards, and then took off and would come back at the end of the show to help me pack up and load the car up. And I remember, man, it was textbook. The first show I ever did, 15 years old. It's really textbook at how not to be personable. Like I said, I was a shy kid, so I just sat there. Honestly, I had all my stuff priced, so that part was good. And one of the things I did is I said I don't really want to talk to people. I'm shy. I'm sort of an introvert. I want to price everything so I don't like if nothing's priced, then someone's gonna, hey, how much is this? I'm interested. So I priced everything for the point of not having to banter too much.
And it's
And
all negotiation.
yeah, well that and I'm the youngest kid in the room, and there were people who thought like my it was my dad's stuff, and he just went to the bathroom or something. So I remember one guy say, hey, I'm interested. I can't remember the card. I'm interested in this card, but I want to see if you can do if your dad can do better on the price. Is he going to be back soon? And I kind of chuckled inside. And I'm like, my dad's not here. This is my table. And just the look on his face. And but I wound up somehow. I don't know how, Danny. I made $1,500 that day. So here I am 15 years old, 1987. So $1,500 in 1987 is more than what we know today, which is still not a bad chunk of change. And I'm 15 years old. I think I'm like, Donald Trump and Rockefeller. And I knew, someone asked me, I was on another show, and the host asked me, like, was there a moment when you knew like you were in the hobby for the long haul? And I always point to that show. Not that it's about money only, but that I don't want to make it about money. I already really had the passion for cards and love cards, and I obviously didn't get started in cards to make money. I was spending all my money, but doing that show out of the gate and doing that well, real that was I was in, and
Yep.
the rest is sort of history. And I remember my dad picked me up. He didn't ask me like in the building. He waited, till we were packed up and got in the car. And how'd you do? And how do you think you did? And there's just a big bulge in my pocket, on like the driver's side
He's
pocket.
talking about
You
money,
know, I
people.
was
He's talking about money, people.
yeah, and I didn't pull it out because I got the seatbelt on, and but I just kind of grabbed it and showed him, and I said I counted like with a little time left. There was a couple late sales, but I think there's about $1,500. Uh, I don't even think I said 1,500. I think because I didn't even know how to do that. I said I think there's $1,500,
Right, right.
and he just looked at me like what? Like he had
Right.
no.
Oh,
And I was
that would have been weeks worth of pay.
yeah, and just kind of shocked. And so we got home, and like I said, my grandma was still around then, lived with my grandma, and my grandma said, "How'd you do?" And she has no concept of cards, or she if I would have told her a couple $100, she would have been, "That's awesome." And by that time, I had counted. Once I got home, I really counted it, and it was it was around $1,500, and I'm like, "Grandma, I made $1,500." And I mean, she was like, "You kidding?" you know. And my grandma was a Jewish lady, and if you know anything, like they're nervous, and you can't walk around with that kind. And at this point, I didn't have a bank account. I had no need for a bank account because I was literally spending every dollar I
Yep.
got anyway. What am I going to put? She goes, "You can't walk around, Johnny. You can't walk around with that. You gotta, you can't go to school. If someone knows, it's New York City. If someone knows you have that, we're opening a bank account." So we opened a bank account, and the rest is sort of history. I started doing shows, and from there, and the one thing I want to say is, even though I was young, some of the customers, the consumers, were kind of taken aback a little bit, or thought, it was my dad's table. Well, most of the dealers in the room, which I already kind of knew from working the shows for Rudy, so they knew who I was, and so
Hmm.
they, some of them took me under their wing, and helped me out. Rudy, the gentleman I worked for, who I've lost track of him. I don't even know if, honestly, Danny's still alive. I hope he is, but at first I got when I told him, like, "Hey Rudy, I appreciate, you have me work for you, but I think I want to try doing a show, solo, and see how it goes." And he was actually mad at me, like,
Ooh.
because he was gonna make all those monster boxes and shoe buys. That's what probably was going through his mind. I mean, he literally, I don't even remember what he said, but it wasn't a great conversation. And at that show, so the first one I do, he was there still,
Ooh,
and I
was
just
that
got,
weird?
cold. Yeah, well, we weren't set up that close, but points. I really couldn't leave the table, unfortunately, because I was there by myself. But I saw him walking around, and if we made eye contact, I got sort of that icy stare or dirty look, and that went on for about a year. I got sort of that, that kind of reception. And then about a year later, at a show, he came up to me, and he extended his hand. He goes, "John, I want to apologize. I was a little selfish, and I didn't want to lose you, and but I don't blame you. You know, you're young and you want to make some money and enjoy the hobby, and can you forgive me? And I'm like, Rudy, I probably wouldn't. Be honest with you, I probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you sort of showing me the ropes. So it's all good, and then we actually started setting up like in the we usually each had
Sure.
two tables, so the setups were always like a box. They would be four tables, and so we just started requesting this set up together. By this time, had another young man sort of making replace me making those Munster and shoe boxes. But I remember at one of these shows, he's like, John, this kid's not as fast as you. You want to show him how to do that? And I actually did. I just kind of half kidding, but half I just rattled off a couple, and he goes, "Yeah, I missed that, man. You want to do that while you're here, and I'll watch your tables. Help yourself." And
That's
we laughed,
fantastic.
and so we sort of mended fences. Took about a year, but and away we went as far as with the shows, and going ahead. I wound up opening my first store at 20 and did that for 7 years. eBay came along, kind of doing the Cliff Notes version here. And then I sold out to my partner. I had a partner in the shop, and then I just did like the tri-state area, travel with shows, put stuff on eBay, and went online as Al Gore's internet took off, and and the rest is we transitioned to that, and here we are, 30 something years later, and it's crazy.
Well, you and I are pretty close in age, and one of the things that you said really resonated with me is that you were excited to get a Reggie Jackson card in 1979. And one of the funny things is, and one of the reasons that I wanted to talk a little vintage today is how different that is. If you got a 10th year base card of somebody today, that means nothing
Yep.
to us. We are so
Yep.
spoiled with one of ones and refractors and autos that it's a totally different world. When we look at vintage, I'll take an eighth year Kofax. I mean, I love that as much as anything. So I think that's one of the big differences is with vintage cards. Rookies of course are great, but you can love a specific year. You can love the look of a set. It doesn't have to be a rookie card. I mean, some guys, certain years are worth more. It's not necessarily based upon what year they were in the league. Um, and you have true population counts that were under control, and so that's one of the reasons I love the vintage world. And you talk about being a young dealer. When you did shows, when I was at the vintage show in Strongville, I'm walking around and I had three dealers look at me and say, "Son, we don't do modern cards at this show."
Yeah.
So, I'm not here for modern cards either. So,
Yeah.
but I think I
They
brought. I
just
mean,
said that like they just assumed, like
I was,
because you
listen, I'm in my mid 40s. I easily
were.
was 30 years younger than everybody in the room.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
but I thought that was great. I've never felt so youthful and spry. We
Well,
spent most of
Jesus,
the
I
yeah.
gotta have to. I'm gonna have to make a trip next time with you. Someone
Oh,
call
it's
me son.
fantastic.
That'll make my day. I won't even have to buy anything. I just leave. I just hear a couple sons. And I'm like, I'm ready to go. Let's get out of here.
Let me tell you, for the first 2 days, all I did was talk about New Balance shoes and comfortable chairs.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this is your show, but you turned the tables on me when I had you on. So I got to do that with this question. It's an age old question, right? So this is a vintage only show, which I love that concept. Well, what did they
Just today.
determine? Like, what did they like? What's the cutoff? What is considered like that's no longer vintage? You can't put that out, and that is like, is it 83? Is it 81? I mean, you ask different people, you're gonna get different answers. So how did they do that? Is it just kind of like, hey, don't put out any new stuff? It wasn't like monitored terribly, or how did they work that?
So I wasn't sure going in. That was kind of my thought. Like, is that just kind of a marketing ploy? We'll call it vintage, and it'll still be 30% modern. Like a lot of shows. But no, it was really I would say 99.999% pre 82. I would say Ripken's
Yeah,
rookie was probably the last card I saw consistently. Now maybe that's a factor in the '83 set. You don't have quite the same Hall of Fame rookie level cards, but I think that '82 seemed to be the cutoff. I saw the Ripken traded a couple times. That was probably the newest card I saw consistently. But you're also talking about, I mean, one of the coolest things about this show is the boxes of commons on the vintage years. Guys,
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of PSA registry collectors, a lot of guys finishing sets, and I miss that world. I think the last couple of years doing the national and Chantilly, I'm doing this weekend, just getting back into kind of that old school mentality. Because when we did shows, there was none of these newer cards. I mean, the whole mentality of doing a show is so different now.
yeah,
So when I go to Chantilly and I'm talking about minor league prospects and Bowman first, and that's going to be a lot of the business there. At this show, I'm talking Lou Elcinder rookie cards, Pete
yeah,
Maravich, and uh, so one of the things I actually thought about when I was there is specifically in the '50s, how beautiful a lot of the cards were. And I think how that really changed the entire industry from roughly 48 51 the early tops to the official 52. So I told you I wanted to talk vintage day for no good reason. I
yeah.
just wanted to talk. 57 tops has been on my mind. I think I'm talking myself into collecting the set. Do you have a favorite 50s set?
I know it's cliche, Danny. The 53 is tremendous. I mean, you almost have to mention them. It's almost like a disqualifier. You almost have to ask that question and say, all right, you can't say 53 tops. Everyone sort of loves it. It's one of those,
It's got the
when
second.
Tops was, yeah, and when Tops kind of started doing like, making like the newer players with on the older, that was the first design they even went to. They knew, and the 52.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like the 57 tops too. I have a lot of the Brooklyn Dodgers in that. My dad gave me some. It's just a lot of like right there, a lot of close ups of facial features, which I think is a huge thing. Is there's something about those big face ups where you see the player, right? Or we think even some of the newer cards, 89 Upper Deck Griffey, 84 Donruss Manley, but 57 also stands out as like the first time for that I really remember, other than I mean 53 too, but it just there wasn't a lot blocking design wise blocking the picture. Just the name and the team, and it was sort of almost translucent as you see there. You can kind of see through that as well. So it was really unobstructed. And so I'd say not just because you said it. Without you, I would have said 57. That 52 is nice too, but again, that's like saying 53. I think I hate to say it like this. It's 52, 53, and 57. Nothing against those other years, but those, I think those are the first three out of that decade. I like 65 tops
Mm-hmm.
as well with the pennants, and 63 with the circle picture as well as the main picture. I like that. And another one I like. I'm trying not to name them all. The 60
No, no.
tops
Okay.
with the horizontals, and the two photos. And so I remember having a lot of the 60 tops back in the day and just buying that from people. Just not even so much to resell, just because I liked it. Like I didn't care if I sold it or I didn't sell it. I just was fond of it. So 60, 65, 57, 53, um, was probably the big four in whatever order you want to put them in.
One of the reasons I know you know this, but for the listeners out there, the '57 tops was the first year they used full photography. It
Yep,
was the first year that there wasn't a colorized or a drawing over top. So exactly what you're talking about,
yep,
that full face, that full shot, and it was also the first time they did the career stats on the back, not just a single year.
yep,
So I love just the fact that we take that for granted. Growing up reading the stats of their whole career up until '57, you couldn't do it. And then being a
yep,
Baltimore guy, you're talking about the Brooks and Frank, both their rookie cards
yeah.
in one set. I'm partial to 57, just kind of for those reasons. Uh, the 55 Bowman, do I have that right with the television?
Yeah, yeah. I didn't like those, but
Yeah, so that was a big
it
conversation at the
depended on the
show.
day. It didn't. It depended on the day. If you asked me on a Monday, I thought they were kind of cool, and then they wore out on me. I'm like, it's kind of I didn't like them as much, 2 days later. But yeah, I mean, it's classic, right? I mean, talk about nostalgia. They made it like the
Hmm.
old TV sets that, even though I'm born in '72, some of those TVs were still in circulation, when you weren't rich and you couldn't upgrade yet. And so whether it be at my house or going to a friend's house or you see it in another room, right? It's just holding on for dear life. It wasn't maybe the main TV, but right, no one threw stuff away like we do today, right? And so I'm familiar with the actual TV sets, and so yeah, the cards. Again, I liked them some days and I didn't, but yeah, classic. You say as soon as you said 55, I said TV set in my head. So just
Well, let me.
word
What other
association.
years? We can be honest. What other years do you not like? We
Um,
can we can talk about cards. They're not big deal.
Yeah, I'm not fond of 58 and 59. They're not terrible. I just think some of the other years around that were so good that it fell short as far as design wise. I'm not obviously we're not talking about the players themselves. We're talking about the card design. Um, I love 60. 61 isn't terrible with kind of the one line divided on the bottom. 62 with the wood borders. I like those.
I'm
You
going to
know,
disagree with you on 62
you do?
politely. I respect
Yeah.
you. I think it looks like the old station wagon panel.
Yeah, yeah, the old surfing wagon.
Yeah.
Yeah, 64 was pretty good with the big white top with the team name. Yeah, I already talked about 65, but that's one of my favorites. 66, I'm not, not a big fan of. Um,
There we go again because I like the 66. I think that's a very classic tops look to me.
yeah.
That's that very clean, very sweet look. Um, and I like that.
All right, so here's the one I just going kind of year by year. The one I really don't like, even to this day, is the 68. Again, kind of that wood grainy. I thought they were sort of trying to go back to 62 or they were
Hmm.
just running out of design ideas and they someone just said, let's try to kind of not make it look exactly like 62, but sort of like 62. So the 68s, obviously it's got Ryan's rookie in it. I mean, we're not talking about the rookie card selection or the players. We're talking about design. I'm not a fan of the 68. The 69s are sharp with the circle with the name and team name, and then you get into the years I'm actually more familiar with because now I'm on the planet, and you got the 70s with the gray, just too much gray.
I'm not
Looks
a
like
big
a jail
70s fan.
cell. Like
Yeah.
yeah, the jail cell cards. 70, not great design, but what's kind of cool about them because they're the black borders. If you get a decent shaped one of those, you change your mind on it all of a sudden. Like,
Well,
oh
I like the
man,
72s, but when you get into like the 75, 76, I think they look very much in the 70s.
yeah,
I think they're
yeah,
very
the
much of the time. I mean, the George Brett
psychedelic
rookie,
look.
well, yeah, the George Brett
The
rookie to me says, you don't have to know anything about baseball, and you say that's from 1970s.
yeah, yep, no doubt. 76. I know some people don't like it, but I don't hate it. And then I think then when you got to the late 70s, even though that's when I kind of started, at the time I loved it because I was brand new. But now looking back, you get into that late 70s, early 80s. It's not great, not great. I'm not fond of the designs now. When you're a kid, and you're not thinking on that level. You just getting as
Hmm.
many cards as you want. I like Henderson's rookie year. I got it right here. That was a cool card. I thought. I'll hold it up there.
I love the
You know, you,
Henderson
you,
rookie.
kind
Yeah.
of, sort of like the 65. You got the pennant, but you also have that top
Well,
pennant with the
that's
position.
the clean look. That's the clean look I
Yeah,
like. The Murray rookie, the 78, that's my taste.
yeah. I like the '80s more than the 1980 tops more than the '78.
Hmm.
Um, and then we got into the '80. You could see. I don't know if you agree with this, Danny. You could see top sort of borrowing from the past now with the '80s. You think about the '83 tops, right? The Boggs Gwynn year. What do you think of Ali? I think of the '63. They're
I
kind
think
of
in it, what was it? 82 was the first year Dunross and Fleer got the license also.
yeah,
So I
81,
think
81.
81, right? So I think Tops didn't know how to handle that. I think they went back to their roots. I think that's exactly what you're describing. Is they tried to say, "Remember us? This, don't go
Yeah,
to those new brands. Remember us." Um, but the
I
other one that
think.
I think is horrible is this. It was the '63 Fleer.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh gosh,
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
how
with the
somebody said they should
stars,
sell
with
that.
the
Yeah.
with a bunch of the star. Yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah. I'm
God.
not a fan. I like '85 tops. I know it's not. It's kind of bait. I don't know. It's. I got
I
a
love
thing for
85
like
tops.
pennants. I got a thing for like diagonal pennants. Apparently, I have a pennant fetish for cards that
Do you
it's
actually have any
subconsciously
pennants?
coming out. Huh?
Do you collect actual pennants or just on cards?
No, I just like the design apparently on card. I guess it's this is almost like a therapy session. You drew it out of me by talking about. Like I didn't know it was deep seated in there, but I have some even like '85 Donruss. That's one of my favorite sets of all time. As crazy as
Really?
that sounds. Yeah,
See, I
and
love
something with
84. I love
the
84 tops, but I don't love the early Dunners.
see. I like eight. I I'm not. I don't hate '84 tops, but the '84 Donruss I thought was really sharp with the ribbon at the bottom and you had the Manly rookie, which was a big thing where
Yep.
I was a big facial, and they stopped doing a lot of the facial close ups on cards at that point. They were doing a lot of inactions or guys standing on the base or in the batter's box,
Hmm.
and that Manly was like boom, right at you. He was one of the hottest cards. I mean, I remember opening
Hmm.
I don't know how much 84 diners at 12 years old. I think I was sticking kids up at school to buy. I'm kidding if anyone's listening, don't. But I mean, it was that I just had 84 diners on the brain. And that's what you do when those new companies came into the picture, Fleer and Donruss first, is that's what you did. You compared like 83.
Hmm.
I liked tops over Fleer and Donruss. 82 I liked tops over for him. But 84, Donruss won that competition for me. 85, that competition was close. 85 Donruss. There was something about I like the black borders with the colored again diagonal kind of striping. They did the Manly Winfield card. I think you probably remember that the
Hmm.
race for the batting crown, and that was a big thing in New York. And so 85 Donruss won that, but there was a close second with 85 tops. Fleer I didn't like the '85 Fleer design, and then we he did that every year, and then Score obviously came on the scene, Upper Deck, and Leaf in 1990, and
I think that's when you and I took a pause.
yeah, at 90, I like the 90 Leaf. It was 90 Leaf if you remember, and at this
It's the
point.
they were the white one with the silver print.
Yeah, and that was
Yeah.
sort of it's I you laugh now, but at the time that was like premium. That was like the prices were higher, the packs were higher priced, and it wasn't even Griffey's rookie, but the Griffey was selling like it was his
Yep.
rookie card. I remember that card going for like 25, $40, and it wasn't the 89 upper deck, it was the second year. And you
Well,
had Bo
design wise,
Jackson.
I think the upper deck put pressure on everybody. I think that's why you saw all the foil
Yeah,
after
they
that.
they kind of stuck their flag in the ground and said, "Hey, let's go." And you're right. I think it really pushed, the other brands to like, "Hey, there's a new kid in the. They're putting holograms on the back of cards. Like,
Stadium
what is
Club
this?
came
How?
out.
Yeah, state. I'm a big Stadium Club guy even to this day.
Hmm.
Um, just the photography
Oh,
and that
exactly.
glossy card, and so they all tried to like, well, like you said, it brought out that competition,
Yep.
to like, hey, all the other companies say, Tops, we know you got a head start on us, but we're here now too, and we can take what you've done and kind of, see you and raise you one. So and I think it was good. And then we all know what happened from
Right.
there too.
All of us had to get real jobs after that. So, a couple things. I'm gonna fess up to you because I don't. You and I, for those of you who don't know, John is a Steelers fan. He grew up a Yankees fan. He's now a Mets fan. I hope I have that all correct.
That's
I am a
correct. Yep.
I'm a diehard Orioles, diehard Ravens fan. So we basically disagree on everything in the sports world, except we get along and I think we see the world the same way from an ethics and value standpoint. Um, Out of that trust and honesty in our friendship, I'm going to fess up on air something I've never fessed up before. I was a
How about-
huge I was a huge Don Mattingly fan. I love Don Mattingly.
yeah,
He's
and you know
unbelievable.
what? He didn't do a lot of talking. He kind of just did his play with his. I mean, there's Red Sox fans that will tell you, like, "Hey, man, I hated the Yankees, but I respected Don Manley," and I mean, that's from a Red Sox fan. So that doesn't surprise me. I mean, it's cool to get that out there, and you feel better, and it's off your chest. But he was one of those kind of guys, like,
He's
you know,
unbelievable.
yeah, 85, 86, about 84, I'd say. Even though I was a Manly fan, that's when I started to change allegiance to the Mets. It's when Steinbrenner was really just too much meddling with everything, doing press. He was doing more talking than the players, trading dudes, firing managers. 7 games in, hiring Billy Martin 18 times. I just remember saying, like, you can't even get a favorite player on the Yankees because they don't stick. If Steinbrenner wakes up on the wrong side of the bed, he's going to ship him out. But even when I changed alliance, like Don Manley, it was still one of my favorite players. I wasn't a Yankee fan any longer, but just the way he played, didn't do a lot of trash talking, didn't do a lot of talking, period, and
Yep.
just went about it. Probably should be in the Hall of Fame. I know he's sort of on that line, that cusp line.
To
You
me, he's
know,
the Gale Sayers rule.
yeah,
You had that period and you had an injury, and
yeah,
was that period good enough? To me, it was. I've heard Cal Ripken talk about Mattingly, and Cal talks. They says he was the best player of that era. So when
yeah.
you have a first ballot Hall of Famer deferring to somebody else, that's all you need to know.
Yeah, hit for average, and he hit some home runs. I wouldn't classify him as a home
30,
run hitter.
35 plus home runs in the 80s was a real.
Yeah,
I mean, to me was legit power. That's one of the reasons I loved him. I thought he was, kind of the five tool guy. He was a great defensive guy. Maybe he didn't steal bases, four tool guy, but he was a
yeah,
Gold Glove first baseman. I think people forget that
yeah,
also.
yeah. I'd put him in. Again, I'm biased being from New York, so for the 2 cents that goes along with that. But he like Ripken said. I mean, and Ripken, if anyone knows hitters, right, it's gonna be someone that's a pretty good hitter in their own right, and saw him firsthand. Look, division rivals, heated rivals. For Ripken's a nice guy. Doesn't really say anything bad about him, but for him to say that, I think that tells you a lot there. And I hope he gets in. Someday. Maybe it'll take with managing with the Marlins and some winning season. Hopefully, whether it's the Veterans Committee someday, and hopefully he's around to enjoy that honor. I don't think too many people. I'm sure you have a few people say, I don't know if he's. We can make an argument, but I think most people. I think if you ask most baseball fans who know the game, especially from, like you said, that era, they'll say that man is a Hall of Famer. Uh,
Yeah,
and
without a doubt.
uh,
Yeah.
and so I hope one day he gets in. I mean, nothing against Gil Hodges, my Brooklyn Dodger guy, and he got in
Yep.
this year. I mean, I think they're both very good, but I think most people would tell you it's hard to compare the '80s, '90s to the '50s and '60s.
Well,
But
if
I
you had
think
to pitch
most
against
people.
if you had to pitch against Jim Rice or Don Mattingly, who would you rather face? To me, I'd pitch to Jim Rice and avoid Mattingly.
Yeah. I mean, you're more likely to get a double play ball or a strikeout. You could give up a home run, but either guy could take you out of the park. So I think Manley is just more of a pure hitter. It was a clutch guy too. He was. I know they didn't win a lot of World Series at that time, but they didn't surround Manley with it. They didn't give him a lot of help really. That was the Steinbrenner, like, just tinkering with everything like it was a Rubik's cube, which is why I kind of got off the bus. But I mean, I don't know if you know how many people disagree. Agree. I think Manley was a better first baseman than Gil Hodges. They were both solid defensively. That might be a push, but I mean Manley was I think a better pure hitter, and not that Gil Hodges was a bad hitter, but and again you're comparing different eras, but not that far off. I mean not like today's game to that. It was closer, but I
That's one of the things I
I,
love
I
about baseball, though, is we can have this conversation. I think it is fair to
yeah.
compare, and I think Mattingly was better than. I think that's okay to say.
Yeah, and I wonder if Hodges getting in this year, Danny, kind of will make the road to get in for Manly a little bit more accessible. I wonder. It's a good question
Well, I mean,
whether that kind of opens the door.
I'll give one. A Maryland guy who could not be nicer. I truly have met this man. He's one of the salt of the earth type of guys. Harold Baines. He's from Maryland. He's had a very long career. Uh, Tremendous left-handed hitter. DH for most of his career. Uh, you and I both watched him. I think his whole career.
Yeah,
There's a lot of players that I would pitch around before Harold Baines if I were to make a list. Um,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and that's a tough one for me.
I don't think I would have put him in. I kind of thinking back when he played and watching him, I thought he was very good. I didn't think he was great. And I think you have to use at some point, maybe not the whole career, but at some point during a player's career that's going to be in the Hall of Fame eventually, you have to use the word great at some point. Even if you don't say their whole career is great, but they're mentioned as great at some point. Uh, and I don't think Harold, I guess the close, he was a great pinch hitter, especially in his latter years, the clutch in that department. But like you said, DH people do penalize you for not playing defense, and players who played will tell you, man, I would have hit more home runs. I would have hit for a higher average if all I had to do was bat and not worry about the error I made 2 innings prior and let that affect me in the box. And I mean, it's not Harold Burns' fault per se. Although some people would say, well, John, if he was good defensively, he probably would have been a DH. So I don't know, but again, nothing against Harold Baines. Like you said, a
Hmm.
nice guy, but probably falls a little short. But yet here he made his way in. Can't take him out, and that's the risk when you put certain guys like that in. It sort of lowers that bar, and then you say, well, if he's in, then this person's
Hmm.
definitely in, and that's where the risk comes in. And I hear people say if there's, and I don't agree with this, Danny. I'll get your take on it. I've heard you know sports people say if we can debate whether that person's in, they shouldn't be in. Like people should be in, should be sort of consensus. And I don't agree with that because there's a lot of even great players that some people won't be a consensus on. So if you play hard and fast by that rule, there'll be a lot of guys not in that definitely should still be in. And so I don't agree with that, but I'll say this. If the debate is really, really heated, and it's a closely contested debate, then you have to start to look. And I think Harold Baines definitely fits that description. There's some other. I mean, Phil Rizzuto, again, that nice guy. But if you look, I mean, he just played where they won a lot of World Series, and I
Hmm.
think he benefited from the rings. But when you look at sort of the resume, it wasn't obviously wasn't terrible, but very good. I don't know if you say great with Phil Rizzuto. You can do that with a lot of guys. Actually, even with the shortstop position in general in baseball, we can, Nelly Fox, some gold gloves, but, I look at Nelly Fox's record and I'm like, I mean, he was a very good player, but I just don't, you
Well,
gotta
I mean,
you gotta
when people
watch where
talk about
that
Omar,
cutoff
what?
is.
Yeah, when people talk about Omar Vizquel, I get it, but no, you know, Listen,
I almost
with
think
the
there should be
yeah.
like a defensive wing of the Hall of Fame. Like, hey,
Ozzie
this,
Smith. Ozzie Smith. There's your champion.
yeah, yeah. Hey, this the overall is not a Hall of Famer, but man, this guy was lights out on defense. We got to give him so like there's a writers
Like the
wing.
Rawlings Hall of Fame. We should do the
Yeah,
Rawlings Hall of Fame.
yeah. Well, there's the writers wing at Hall. Hey, this is the defensive players
That's
wing
actually not a
of the
bad
Hall of
idea
Fame.
at all.
Yeah. So these are
It's really not a bad
defensive Hall
idea.
of Famer, right? Defensive Hall. You have your
Right.
regular Hall of Fame, which is both hitting and defense overall. Everyone gets in, and then
Good.
you
So we
have
can
your
move. We
defensive
can move
thing.
Ozzie Smith over. We can put Luis
Yep.
Aparicio in there.
Yep. Yep.
We can get
Nellie Fox.
Andrew
But
Jones. We can put back in there. Who when I worked for
yep.
the Braves, I
Omar
got to watch
Vizquel gets
play.
into that
Vizquel
area.
gets in there. Yeah, yeah. That's a great idea. I love this. I think we should start this, John.
Yeah, we'll start the petition. The first two signatures on that petition. Yeah, but
All
it's
right. Well,
true. Like
yeah.
I think you got to play. I think you got to be both. I think you got to be both. And Ozzie Smith, not. I mean, great player, um, but he's just a really great guy. And I think being a great guy helps you get in. I think that's just sort of a no brainer. I think being sort of a bristly guy can hurt you a little bit too. So
Well,
Eddie
that's. I mean,
Murray.
we'll keep the
Eddie
politics out of
Murray
this.
wasn't the nicest guy.
Yep.
Andre Dawson was sort of kind of kept to himself, and they got in. They're both Hall of Famers, but I don't believe they. And I don't know about Eddie Murray. I'm not sure. He might have been first ballot, but I remember when he was in the discussion to get in. There was people arguing against it, which there really wasn't any, but they were kind of pointing to he didn't talk to the media, kind of rude, and it's not Hall of Nice Guy, it's Hall of Fame based on what they do on the field. I mean, if so I don't take any of that stuff doesn't factor to me. So, but to some,
Well, I'm a big fan of your podcast, and you talked recently about some of the young players in the league. Looking forward to kind of where there was value in cards in the market. So, we've started this conversation kind of back in the '50s. We've brought it all the way now into current players, and just kind of put a bow on this. I know you mentioned the guys that you look at that I think everybody knows: Soto, Acuna, Tatis, Otani, and I agree with you. Otani counts as a young prospect and player. But what I really love to talk about is that next group of guys because a lot of people are in this to make some money, and
yep,
it's where are those opportunities? Now I heard you bring up somebody who surprised me on your podcast. Um, in a happy way, and I let me tell you, never ever am I rooting for you to be right more than I am with Ryan Mountcastle. So, uh,
yeah,
uh, let me tell you, when you put him in that conversation from an outsider's perspective, I'm in Baltimore. We've been watching him for years. From an outsider's perspective, you find Ryan Mountcastle to be a very investable player right now.
I like them. When you look at, like you said, listen, sometimes we don't always like to make it about dollar signs, but it also is too. To not talk about that is sort of put burying our head in the sand too. When you look at what his stuff's going for, Danny, I'm sure being an Orioles guy, he is like super affordable. And
Hmm.
when you look at what he did last year, what he's done as he's come up through the minor league ranks, good, pretty solid defensive player, and is actually can play multiple positions as well. So, I like the guy. I love guys when their values are just too low for the talents they are. You look at Bobby Witt. I think Bobby Witt is going to be a great player, and the scouts do too. But his stuff, you know how this goes. You see these guys haven't even done nothing yet on the major league level. It's all speculation, and they're bringing four figures, right? And Montcastle's did it already. I know it's small sample size, but I just think, barring injury, this guy's going to have. He's going to be one of those guys. I'll see what you say about this. I think I said this during that episode. He's gonna have one of those 10 to 15, 16, 17 year careers. It's not gonna be overwhelming, but then when you look at that card, right, and you look at the totals at the bottom of that card, you're gonna be like, holy smokes, I didn't realize he was putting this kind of career together. And he's going to kind of, I know it sounds crazy in today's day and age with all the apps and technology and analytics. He's going to be one of those guys that's going to get sort of overshadowed by some of these other young players who are a little more flashy, maybe playing a bigger, more successful kind of baseball city. But at the end of the day, I think people are going to be surprised at the career. Again, I don't want to, jinx him. Barring injury, this guy's going to put together probably a Hall of Fame career. He's sort of, I don't know if you agree with this. He sort of has like a Ripken esque sort of quality to him. Sort of just kind of goes about his business. Not a lot of talking. Kind of does what he's asked to do, whether it's to play different positions. And I like the guy. I liked him. Early on reading. I'm a I play fantasy leagues. I play in dynasty leagues where we actually have a minor league draft, and
Yep.
uh, I wasn't fortunate enough to get him, but in my league, but I was on him. Someone else was on him too, and picked him before me. But just like his game, and doesn't get talked about enough. And so I made a point to include him in there. Part of me was like, I shouldn't talk about him because I might let I'm half kidding here, but like it's nice being able to buy him some autos and colored rookies, and not have to mortgage the house to do it. I'm like, if I start talking about him more, it might get a little trickier to do that. But I also want to give credit where credit's due. Another guy, Kyle Tucker,
Hmm.
he's poised to have he's one of my dark horse MVP
Hmm.
candidates this year, and he's another guy. We all like to talk about the Sotos and the Kunas and Otani, and rightfully so. You look at their bodies of work, defend them, but I also like the other guys who are right there and just don't get talked about enough. And so Tucker and Modcastle, another guy. I don't think I mentioned him, or just real brief, like Rafael Devers. I know that's
I love
Boston,
Devers. Yep.
but and people think he's older than he is because he came up when he was like 18, 19
Yep.
years old. That's the thing. When a guy comes up young, they feel like they're 30 and they're like
I, I mean,
25.
he's really right. I was about to say he's only like 25, and he's been in
But
the league for
people think
for
he's older
42 years.
because,
Yeah.
yeah, because he's been in the league now for 4 or 5 years, and people think they automatically age him. Same thing with Otani. People say, well, he played in Japan for 3, 4 years. But he's still not that old, and that's why he's in that conversation. Someone with that show, I got a message from someone that was a little upset. They're like, why no Jordan Alvarez? And I
Felt the
like
same.
Jordan Alvarez. I like him, but again, it's a whole DH argument. I think Jordan Alvarez could win the MVP.
Yep.
But you can't mention everybody. So someone's going to get their feelings hurt. But I like Jordan. I like guys that play defense and offense, and he does play, and he's not always a full time DH, but he plays he's a lot of DH being in the American League, and allows them to get another bat in there with them. And but I have no, I'm not against Jordan Alvarez. I just you know after, it's funny, after I kind of edited the show, put it in the hopper, I said, man, I didn't mention Alvarez. I probably should have, but I think it was the DH bugaboo that kind of left them on the outside looking in.
Well, when I introduced you, I was kidding, but that you can move the market just by mentioning Kyle Tucker. Uh, I thought that was a tremendous call by you. He was one of the guys I've absolutely been loading up on.
Yeah,
And one of the things I look at a lot of time are the rebound guys that were the top prospects, either had a non-major injury or just a couple of years of learning, or the pandemic put a little hiccup in their career, but they're young, they're talented, and they've got a full career ahead of them, and their card prices are down. And I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of those guys, and that's where if you're listening to this podcast and you like making money on some of the newer cards, that's my personal strategy. I try not to overpay on guys because at this point, where can Tatis go with value, or they can only almost live up to their value. It's hard to even surpass where their
Yeah,
value is.
the ceiling's not as high, and that's
Yeah,
kind of, I wanted to mention them because they're too talented to not. That would
sure.
be completely unfair. So I don't. But that's why I focused a little bit on the Tuckers and the Montcastles of the hobby world, because the ceiling is definitely higher for what their cards are selling for, and you hit it right on the head, Danny. If you're gonna buy cards with that premise in mind, right? I mean, Soto's arguably probably the best in the bunch potentially, but like you just said, his cards ain't cheap. So
Hmm.
that ceiling, you're almost touching it. You just put your
Yep.
hands like this, and you're right there. Now, if you're a Soto fan, if you're a Nationals guy, you just want to get everyone, or just PC him. I get that. But if again, I know some people kind of cringe when we talk about the financial or the investment part of the hobby, but to not talk about it or not acknowledge it is being disingenuous. I'm not going to
Absolutely.
do it. I know certain people get turned off when that conversation comes up, but I think more people care about that than don't. Let me put it that way,
Well,
and so
I
we
think it's
have
also
to.
a bit. I was about to say, I think it's also a baseball conversation. We're talking about guys where they are in their career, and their
Yeah,
potential. When I look at a Lou Bob, and there's Alec Baum, I think there are guys that, even though there's some accomplishments in their past, their prices are so far down from where they were. There's nothing wrong
yeah.
with, getting a great talent at a good price.
Yeah, and you mentioned a guy Tatis, right? Now the injury thing's starting to become sort of seems like almost every year thing. He's not putting full seasons together, but sometimes that's a great opportunity to buy. If you think, hey,
Hmm.
this is more of an anomaly rather than a trend, that's when you buy him. Like I've got a ton of we didn't I didn't even mention him on that show. So no one can accuse me of pumping and dumping, but I love Lewis Robert. And when he got hurt, that's the thing in this hobby. You know this as well as I do. A guy gets an injury and everyone like jumps off the ship like the sky is falling. Like people get hurt in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. Like this is
Hmm.
not a new trend. Like I don't get the phenomenon that people do when someone gets hurt and everyone just bails. Like I that's when I like to buy. I like to, you've heard buy the dip. Now, Tatis is starting to, I'm not going to lie, Tatis is starting to scare me a little bit when it comes to
Hmm.
these injuries. It seems like every year it's going to be a 30, 40 games kind of missing from the record. But Lewis Robert got hurt, one time. He came back and played pretty well. And so I'm not going to penalize him for it. If other people want to like have a fire sale with him, I'm going to get my PayPal out and say, hey, I'll buy your losses and hopefully they're wins. But you don't know. You don't know. Maybe they're smart and I'm dumb. That time will tell that story. But I mean that's how you gotta take a chance on a guy. If you think the guy is talented, and I think he is, and an injury is just an injury. I've been hurt. Played sports. I played again, and I don't. It's the what have you done for me lately
Yep.
mentality. When the guy's not playing, people like I'm on to the next guy already. Like this guy's going to be back in like 3 weeks, not
Yep.
3 years, not never, like 3 weeks, right? And but people like it's it's that mentality. That's the biggest change to me. One of the biggest changes in the hobby from years ago is just the swings of getting off and on players. Switching up the basketball real quick. Bobo has like a monster scrimmage game, right? Everyone's selling this stuff for crazy money. Where is he now? Like I don't even know if he's like in the like. I didn't have a lot of his stuff, but man, when that day, I'm not gonna lie about it. I didn't even have it listed, but I put it on there and kind of cashed out. It was like the casino. I'm like I'm cashing out now the slot luck change. And
Yep.
that's how people are in the hobby. And not my style. I'm in it for the long haul. I've done it for almost 40 years. I'll probably do it till it's over for me, and meaning life. And so if someone wants to get off, the ship just because a guy gets hurt and going to be out a couple weeks, then and I think that's just a normal injury that's not going to be a long term one, and I'm gonna kind of cash in on that mentality. And I don't feel bad about it. I'm not the only one that does that either, and I just think that's smart. Doesn't make me right either, right? I don't want to jinx him, but Lewis Robert could be an injury prone player. We you never know. Zion Williamson is another guy that I'm a little leery now. Tatis, I kind of said that on that program
Hmm.
you mentioned. When these injuries start to be sort of a yearly thing, and they almost get known more for that than what they do when they're on the playing surface. That's where I start to worry a little bit more. But
We
you never know.
you alluded earlier to a lot of the Bowman first prospects and a lot of the young guys that didn't
Yeah.
even play. Um, and to me, one of the things that I've really found kind of fascinating is the whole top prospect list. As long as you're on the top prospect list, the top 100, then the top 50, and the top 10, that seems to be the stock market for prospects. And then when they graduate to the majors and they get their 150 at bats and they no longer qualify for the prospect list, it seems like their value just disappears, just because they're no longer on a prospect list. And I think that's what some of these guys we're talking about, where they've graduated to the majors, they still have talent, they're young players, they're just not on a prospect list. And the older I get, I think the more people just buy off prospect lists, the more inefficient I think that strategy is.
Yeah, what I think I know the answer why. Let me see what you think. Me and you will watch games, and the games we don't watch, right? What do we do either that night at at 10:30, 11 o'clock, or the next morning, right?
Hmm.
We check out all the box scores. A lot of times I don't even have to do that because I don't know about you, but I play fantasy baseball. So
Yep.
I already know sort of what everyone did the night before. I actually put a question this week on my Twitter, and I asked. I said, if you play fantasy baseball, you know, does playing fantasy sports give you an advantage in the hobby? Now, answering my own question, I feel it does. But right
Absolutely.
now, I think it's only got a few hours left. Believe it or not, and I think it's like 44. I put the three options. I put yes, no, and the third option was a comical one, and it was I still think Matt Harvey's good, which means I don't really follow. So I think it's 44% no's. I think it's 27% yes, and then the last or 30. It's 44, 30, and 26. Matt Harvey is still good, and I'm
That's
a little
hilarious.
surprised. I'm a little surprised by that, Danny. That now I don't know that everyone answering that question plays. I asked like if you play fantasy baseball, do you like? There's probably people answering that poll that don't, and they're just answering it as
Well, I
if
think
they did.
you don't know what you don't know. Like you said,
Yeah,
we're watching it. We know what we see. I follow the minor leagues.
yeah.
If you don't know, there's a minor league app. You can watch minor league games and see some of these prospects every night.
That and
Not
there's
expensive. Yeah.
free plug. I won't even mention it. There's three or four great, talking about podcasts. There's three or four great minor league podcasts where
Mm-hmm.
that's all they talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Guys that haven't even been to the big leagues yet, and these they have scouts on that are talking about hit tools and holes in their game and how they project. And you'll hear some of those guys on those podcasts say, like, I know he's raking in Double A, but I think he's got some flaws, and he's going to be an okay player, but I don't think he's going to translate what you're seeing now on this level. He's not going to be that kind of player. And it doesn't mean they're right, but these guys are getting paid to make these evaluations and determinations, and they've done it for some of them for a while. So I'm going to listen to what they say. It don't mean I'll always base any kind of buying decisions on that. But sure, you gotta take that in and then make your own sort of evaluation whether you agree or disagree with that. But there's if you know there's plenty of information out there um, to get sort of that. Being a fantasy guy, being a baseball fan just in general, it's not even a fantasy thing. Um, being in a league where you have a minor league draft as well as your regular league draft, like I've always been, into the minor leagues, even back in the 80s when I was a young dealer. I had monster boxes full of minor league sets, first sets of these guys. So I've
You
always
have
had a
you
minor
you.
league
I'm sorry,
aspect.
John. You have a lot on your eBay page too, don't you? I'll give you a free plug there. You do
Yeah,
have a
yeah, I
yeah.
think so. I try to get them up there. I don't have everything that's in my inventory on there. I've actually sort of kind of phased some stuff off too, especially on the graded side of the things with my slabs. Free
Hmm.
plug for them. But you
I,
know,
I I
uh,
use them as well, by the way. Yep.
yeah, yeah, yeah. 1%. I mean, you can't beat that. Um, so yeah, I've always been kind of a minor league guy. Even with cards, even with those sets, and some of those sets, were team issued. There's like less than 1,000 of them, and the Bellingham '87 for Griffey, Piazza's, Bakersfield. I mean, I can rattle off a bunch like that, and I was buying those back. I don't want to say I saw it all, what they would do today, but I just knew there's not a ton of these, and with the rookie card craze, at some point, someone's going to say, "Hey, this is not really the first ever card. It's the first main brand, top Fleer down or score upper deck. But he has a card, and this was team issued and sold at the stadium, and there's less than 1,000 of these. And this is my guy. I got to get that card. And I kind of saw that. And so I was in on early on some of those. Some of them I probably sold too early. One particular set that comes to mind that I had like double digits of was the Tampa Bay Yankees one with Mariano's
Mm.
first card. He looks about if anyone's familiar with that set, you can eBay it and see the card. He looks like he's 14 years old.
Hmm.
He might be 14 years old. I don't know, but baby faced, and that set today is I don't know up. If you grade it and that grade's high, it's going to be a four-figure card. The sets themselves, even ungraded, are $500-600. I sold probably the 10 I had for $200. I'm not crying because I probably bought them for 10-20 bucks a piece. But if I knew like they were going to do what they did now, I would have either thought about grading some or holding on to them and waiting a little bit. But I didn't lose, obviously. I made my, but there's a lot of stuff like that, and you got to sort of think out of the box a little bit. And I don't think minor league cards are booming, but I think certain sets like that are booming. And if you can figure out which one and kind of get in on that ground level, you'll be all right. But there's plenty of those minor league sets. I have 20 of at Greg Vaughn's and even some Gary Sheffield. Not that Sheffield had a terrible career, but was $100 $200 set at one point, and
Uh-huh.
now it's 10-20 bucks, and it doesn't sell at 10-20 bucks. So that's a double edged sword too as well. So
Well, we can talk about Gary Sheffield's gold initial braces another time, but he was actually maybe the best bad speed I've ever seen. But
yeah,
anyway,
yeah, quick
well,
wrists.
you have humored me on a journey, like I said, from the 50s, 60s, 70s through today and through the prospects. And I told you I just wanted to sit, and it's my podcast, so I can say this, shoot the shit, have some fun, and just enjoy what we get to do. Uh, I look forward to seeing you at the National. I'm sorry that you're in New York. We don't get to do more shows together, but I certainly owe you dinner in Atlantic City, and I look forward to seeing you in person.
No doubt, no doubt. And, this was a blast. It always is. Anytime you can talk about the hobby with anybody, it's fun. And then with somebody you really like, it's even, you ramp up the fun meter to the next level. And time flies when you do these. We could do probably, like you said, 3-4 hours. We can make this like roots. the hobby version, like an eight
Well,
series.
Ken Burns will do a Danny and John the Ken Burns special.
I don't know how the ratings are going to be, but I'm all for it. Let's come on, Ken. Let's go.
I say it all the time. If anybody doesn't know, I do radio in Baltimore. I say thousands of people listen to me, just none of them are related to me. My my family's never heard me once.
Yeah, you don't feel bad. Don't feel
Yeah.
bad. I joke. My wife's not a card person. Like she knows what I do. She knows the podcast. She's supportive, but she
Hmm.
doesn't know. Like I can hold two cards up and say one of these is $1 and one of these is $800. Pick. She has a 50% chance of getting it right. To be honest, if I give her two options, but she would be completely guessing in all those cases. My son does know a little bit about cards. He's not into it in the same way as me, but he might listen every once in a while, but he'll joke around and tell you there's a running joke that, Eric Norton's his favorite podcast because we used to binge listen to Eric, but even before I did my show, when we would travel from, I'm in Syracuse now, we would travel to New York to visit family, and we would just binge listen to that. And he said, "Hey, Dad, with all your experience, couldn't you do a podcast?" And I'm like, yeah, but Eric's pretty good. Like, he goes, it's something to think about. And that's a longer conversation. But I always credit, Eric Norton as sort of being my inspiration to start the podcast. But so I always joke when I have Eric on, you're my son's favorite podcaster. We both get a chuckle out of that, and funny moments like that. But it's great, right? The stories and the people you meet along the way, and getting to know you now. And like you said, we're counting down the days, Danny, to the national. I believe I have a countdown on my phone. I think I looked today. It's 100 at the time of this recording. We're 117 days away, and we're one day closer to it, and it's gonna be fun. And I can drive to this one.
I know, me too. I had for Chicago. It was
Yeah,
much more expensive last year.
yeah. I can bring like when I fly. I don't know about you, but I can't bring the stuff I want because I'm trying to do the one
Oh,
bag and one bag in my backpack, and and so now I can load up the SUV. My wife's actually going uh, on this trip.
oh,
You
so
won't
is my
see her.
wife. Yeah, yeah, that'll be great.
Yeah, you won't see her at the show. I don't know.
You won't see my
She
wife either. She'll be at the
Yeah.
booth. Yeah.
Yep, that's my wife. My wife's gonna be with an umbrella, her toes in the sand, a book, and a beverage, and it's gonna be a vacation for her, and it's gonna be fun times for us, and that's fine by me.
Well, I'm gonna do the thing that I know you hate when I do it, but I'm gonna throw a little respect because you've paid it forward in your life. You talked about Eric Norton and how that kind of got you started with your son, and I've told this story before when you had me on. You were certainly a big help to me in relaunching my podcast and kind of guiding me and giving me advice to just kind of be myself and be true to myself and do what I want and don't listen to all the noise
Yep.
that'll come in. And I can't thank you enough. You are now a regular listener for my daughter and myself when I drive her to carpool in the morning. So, you've become that for her and for me. And I'm sitting here today and loving what I do, and because you gave me some great advice, and it's very easy for people to tell you what they want to tell you. It's very hard to tell people what they need
Yep.
to hear. And I really respect that you did that for me. And I'm lucky enough to call you a friend, but you're certainly a giant in this hobby. And I can't thank you enough for coming on. Unfortunately, you have no quarterback this year in Pittsburgh, so you're stuck with that. But
Well, I was gonna say before you said that, then I was gonna say, and we proved that a Steeler fan and a Raven fan can coexist and actually be good friends. And then you had to go and drop the. But you know what? I don't know. We're gonna see, right? I mean, nothing's guaranteed.
yep.
I can make an argument. We haven't had a great quarterback the last 2 years. I mean, Roethlisberger, having trouble getting the ball vertical. And I'll say this, I don't know how Trubisky's going to do. I got some faith. But I think he'll be able to get the ball downfield. Just hopefully it's in the right color jersey. That's the risk there. But we're starting. I don't want to say we're starting over, but we're
I
sort of
was about to
reloading.
say, I think you may want to
We're
embrace the rebuild, John.
Yeah, well, it's gonna. You know what? I will say this: it's a lot of it's obviously, as you said, it's going to hinge on that quarterback, how that transition is. If Trubisky uh, is what I think he potentially could be, my son likes him a lot more than I do. I don't dislike him, but my son really thinks like it's going to be like he's going to be very good and sort of resurrect his career as a quarterback. I won't go that far. I hope he's right, tell you the truth, but I'm not as confident as my son Jordan. But it's worth the flyer. They're not paying him a ton of money. If he's a bridge guy to that, that next draft quarterback, then it is. I mean, that's the big fear is right. We miss with
Hmm.
Trubisky and we miss on a draft guy too. And now
Right.
you're
I mean,
you're back
what are you
at
guys
square one.
Are you guys looking at Pickett? Is that the rumor? Or?
Yeah, my son, Danny, my son doesn't like him. That's the reverse. So I like
Right.
Pickett more than he does. It's the whole small, his hands measured small. If you buy into that theory, they love Willis. I just don't think they're not going to get Willis at 20. There's too many teams that I think he's kind of become that number one guy that people fall in love with, not just the Steelers. So if the Steelers think he's going to drop to 20, I think they're fooling themselves. They'll get Pickett more at 20, and I'm not even sure Pickett will last at 20 either. But to me, they have more of a chance at Pickett at 20 than Willis at 20. Willis, they're almost going to have to trade up and give up some pick capital. I like him, but this quarterback class is not doesn't knock my socks off.
No.
Quite frankly, and you never know. I've said that before, and it turns out the class turns out to be good. And then there's been, how this goes, where the class is, on paper, the best quarterback class we've seen, and they fizzle out. So you never know. But no one, Willis is probably would be number one on my board, but I don't think he's an automatic home run. And I think you see what Trevor Lawrence struggled last year, and I think everyone was calling him a transcendent kind of quarterback. I still think he's going to be very good. I blame Urban Meyer for a
Yeah.
lot of that
Yeah.
that stuff. So I'm not out on Trevor Lawrence, but I don't think it's very rare that you can point to a guy, a quarterback, and say for 100% certainty that it's a no doubt Hall of Famer before he even gets in the league. And it's I'm almost I wanted him to try to get Rodgers or Russell Wilson just because I know they're not young, but at least they can play. But they have faith. I don't know how much of an effort they really made in those with those particular players. I think they were in on Jimmy G, and then the surgery was announced, and I think they were out. And I think Trubisky was like number one on their free agent list. All those other guys I mentioned had to be traded, and so I think they went to what they viewed was the best available free agent that had some experience. I mean, you look at his record, he was 34-24 in Chicago. Many people say Matt Nagy is a terrible coach and a quarterback killer. So I'm going to hold out a little faith. I'm sure the Steelers watched broke down plenty of film on him before they signed him. And, 7 million a year for 2 years, 14 million. It's worth the flyer.
I thought Jameis Winston would be better, but I think we're splitting hairs. I mean, it's rebuilding. Somebody's just a placeholder at this point.
Yeah, and as crazy it sounds, I think we're the Bengals right now. All of a sudden, are like the tour de force in that AFC North. I don't enjoy saying that, but I mean, right now that's where we're at. I made the Super Bowl. I hate, my son don't like them, and my son actually will yell at me because I don't like the Bengals, Jordan, but like I got a thing. I like Joe Burrow. I know that's sort of like sacrilegious, but there's something about him. I like him. I wish he was in another. I wish he was in the NFC, and I could
Hmm.
like him even more. I don't obviously like him at least twice a year. I don't want him to have a good game, but I like him as a player. I think as crazy as it sounds, Cincinnati has made some good picks and sort of turn that thing around quickly. And so we're gonna see, right? But that this division, it's always fun, black and blue division, and let's say someone goes down like a Burrow. Not that I hate to root for an injury. That's a terrible
It's
thing to.
okay in the AFC North.
Yeah, but he goes down, and that's probably the end of the Bengals. I mean, you could I and that Lamar Jackson although Huntley looked pretty good when he came in, but
We lost 25 guys, not just
yeah,
Lamar.
yeah. So an injury can change that division. Listen, no one picked the Bengals to win the AFC North this year, and yet they did, and made the not only win the AFC North, but almost win the Super Bowl. Very
Yeah.
close game, and so that gives me faith. As much as I don't want to see the Bengals do good, it gives me faith that the Steelers can be down and maybe have with with some luck and maybe some good drafts and free agent signings, we can surprise some people. I'm gonna when season starts off, we're all 0-0, and then we'll see how it all plays out.
Well, then I'll have you back maybe next football season, and we'll see where these draft picks have landed, and we'll see where our teams are. I think it's the first time in a long time we've both drafted in the top 20. So
Yeah,
we'll,
we'll have to
we'll
do a
get
friendly
yeah.
bet. We'll have to do a friendly like
Oh,
Ravens
absolutely.
Steelers. Like they play twice in the regular season. Like if someone sweeps, if
I think
like
we
the
put. I think
Steelers
we. I think
sweep,
we put. I think we put.
you have to wear a Steeler jersey on your
Yep.
show, and I have to come on. I have to be on that show, and
Yep.
vice
Yep.
versa. If the Ravens win both the games, you have to get me a Ravens jersey, and I have to wear it and ship it back to you.
Well, I won't
And
edit.
do
I
a
won't edit. I won't edit this out. We got to bet Ravens Steelers. The loser has to wear the jersey on the other one's podcast. How's that?
Yep, on video, and that way,
On video. Yep.
whenever we're feeling down, if we get one of those moments, we can turn that YouTube on and just laugh at the other person and say, "All right." So,
All right, my friend. Well, I will definitely have you back during football season. Thank you many times again. Always a pleasure, and I'm sure we will be talking off air all the way through in the summer and right up until the national.
yeah, no doubt, no doubt, was a pleasure, man.
All right, John Newman, the great host of Sports Card Nation, and as he says, the hobby is the people. And thank you so much for coming on, as always. Appreciate it, John.
You're welcome anytime.